Remember the 5th of November, a rhyme etched into British memory. When we think of the Gunpowder Plot, our minds often go straight to the image of Guy Fawkes lurking beneath the Houses of Parliament with barrels of gunpowder. But behind this infamous act of treason was a network of safe houses, country estates, and manor halls, homes that became unwitting accomplices to history. In this episode of Historical Chronicles, we discover what happened to those very homes, the secret meeting places, the hideouts, the properties owned or used by the conspirators. We'll uncover their stories, explore what remains of them today, and ultimately reveal what happened to the places that sheltered England's most wanted men. The Gunpowder Plot was a failed attempt by a group of English Catholics to assassinate King James I and blow up the House of Lords during the state opening of Parliament on the 5th of November 1605. Led by Robert Catesby, the plotters included well-known names like Thomas Percy, Thomas Winter and his brother Robert, John Wright, and of course, Guy Fawkes. Their goal was to destroy the Protestant government in one stroke and spark a Catholic uprising. Some scholars argue that the plot may have been known about, or even manipulated, by Robert Cecil, King James I's spymaster. The theory suggests that Cecil allowed the conspiracy to unfold just far enough to expose Catholic dissenters, discredit the Jesuit order, and reinforce Protestant control of the country. While there's no definitive evidence that the plot was entirely fabricated, it is clear that the government used it to its advantage. The crackdown that followed was swift and brutal, with Catholic worship pushed even further underground. Whatever the truth behind the motives or manipulations, one fact remains undeniable. It wasn't a spontaneous act. It was a carefully laid plan. Their homes weren't just places to rest. They were the nerve centers of rebellion, the safe havens for fugitive priests, and in some cases, the last stand of the plotters themselves. Arguably the most dramatic setting is Holbeche House, near King's Winford in Staffordshire. The building was constructed in around 1600 and belonged to Stephen Littleton. It became the last stand for many of the conspirators. After Guy Fawkes was captured, chief plotter Robert Catesby didn't give up. He still believed that an uprising was possible. With his men, he stole horses from Warwick Castle and rode to Holbeche House via Hewell Grange, where they stole ammunition and gunpowder. But the English weather was his downfall. On his way to Holbeche, the gunpowder got wet. When they arrived, they laid it out to dry near the fire, but a spark landed on the gunpowder and caused an explosion which blinded John Grant and slightly injured Robert Catesby, Ambrose Rookwood and Henry Morgan. This was the final blow. Thomas Winter asked Catesby what they were going to do next and was told, "We mean to die here." The next morning, the Sheriff of Warwick, who had no idea of what had happened at Westminster but was trying to apprehend them for stealing the horses, arrived. Close behind was 200 of the king's men. They were completely surrounded and a fire was started to drive the men outside. Thomas Winter, John and Christopher Wright and Ambrose Rookwood were shot in the courtyard, but Thomas managed to make it back to the house where Robert Catesby and Thomas Percy were. According to the account by Thomas Winter, Catesby said, "Stand by me, Mr. Tom, and we will die together." The three went outside to face their death. Catesby and Percy were felled by a single shot, but Winter, Rookwood, Keyes, Grant and Morgan were captured and taken to London for execution. Holbeche House still stands today, although it has changed hands over the centuries. It was a school for some time and a private care home. New facades were added in the 19th century when the building was extended, and in 1951 it gained a Grade II listed status. A few years later, the Gunpowder Society discovered that the only part of the building original to 1605 was the huge fireplace. Sadly, in 2023 it became derelict and was added to the Historic England's Buildings at Risk Register. Our next stop is Coughton Court in Warwickshire, owned by the Throckmorton family, a well-known Catholic stronghold at the time. It served as a rallying point for Jesuit priests who supported the Catholic cause. Robert Catesby, the mastermind behind the Gunpowder Plot, was closely linked to Coughton. His mother, Anne Throckmorton, was from the estate and Robert spent part of his youth there. In 1605, Catesby chose Sir Everard Digby to oversee the Midlands part of the plot, which involved a plan to kidnap King James I's daughter and eventually install her as a puppet monarch. Princess Elizabeth, just 9 years old, was living at Combe Abbey near Coventry. In preparation, Sir Everard leased Coughton in October 1605 and moved in with his wife and 2 sons, while the Throckmorton family lived at one of their other properties. Then came the moment of crisis. When Guy Fawkes was arrested in London, Catesby sent his servant Thomas Bates from Holbeche House to Coughton to deliver the news. Bates arrived at 6 a.m, finding Lady Digby in the Tower Room, a space that doubled as a secret Catholic chapel and chosen for its panoramic views of the countryside. From here, they could spot approaching soldiers. The room also features a double priest hole, which was cleverly designed to contain sacred vessels and vestments in the top compartment to distract searchers, while the lower one hid the priest himself. That morning, the Tower Room was filled with tension. Father Garnet, Father Tessimond, the Vaux sisters, and Nicholas Owen, the priest's whole expert, had stayed up all night, anxiously awaiting word. When the news came, most fled. Father Tessimond made his way to Holbeche House to join Catesby, but eventually escaped to France. Incredibly, despite their deep ties to the conspirators, the Throckmortons escaped punishment and their property wasn't confiscated. An astonishing outcome considering their home was used as a base of operations. Coughton Court still survives today and continues to reveal its secrets. Take the drawing room, for example, which was reopened in 1956 after being blocked up for over 130 years. It still contains its original stone chimney-piece, and the windows hold heraldic stained glass that commemorates Throckmorton marriages to other leading Catholic families, including the Catesbys and Treshams. In fact, the mothers of both Robert and Frances Tresham were Throckmorton sisters, Anne and Muriel. Today, 21 generations later, the Throckmorton family still live at Coughton Court, though the estate is now owned by the National Trust, having been transferred in 1946. Let's now go to Huddington Court, near Hambleton in Worcestershire, the ancestral home of the Winter brothers Robert and Thomas, who were also cousins of Robert Catesby. Built around 1340, Huddington Court is a striking black and white half-timbered manor house, complete with its own moat. Remarkably, it still looks much as it would have done over 400 years ago, featuring the original wood panelling. As children, the Winter brothers experienced the dangers of Catholic life under Elizabeth I. In 1586, their uncle, a Catholic priest, was executed. This trauma likely shaped their future path. Thomas Winter, the younger brother, went on to fight as a soldier in Flanders and France in the 1590s, and in 1600 he travelled to Rome. 2 years later, Thomas was actively involved in Catholic circles, including secret discussions with Catesby, Francis Tresham, and Lord Monteagle, seeking Spanish support for an English Catholic uprising. It was in early 1604 that Catesby recruited him into the Gunpowder Plot. Though initially sceptical of its success, Thomas travelled to Flanders, where he sought Spanish aid, but instead he met and recruited Guy Fawkes, whose military background made him an ideal accomplice. As the plot developed, Thomas and Huddington Court played a central role in the preparations. When he learned through a servant of Monteagle about a leak in the conspiracy, he urged the others to abandon the plan. But his warning was ignored. After Fawkes's arrest, Thomas fled London and returned to Huddington, where the surviving conspirators regrouped. They tried, unsuccessfully, to rally support among local Catholics, and then travelled to Holbeche House for the last stand. On the 8th of November, during a shootout with the pursuing authorities, Thomas was wounded by a crossbow bolt in the shoulder and was captured. He later gave one of the most detailed confessions of the entire plot. He was tried on the 27th of January 1606 and executed just days later in Old Palace Yard, Westminster. His older brother Robert Winter, born around 1566, inherited Huddington Court. The estate became a safe haven for Catholic priests, complete with 2 hidden priest holes believed to have been built by Nicholas Owen, one of which wasn't discovered until the 1920s. Robert became involved in the plot sometime in early 1605, possibly because the conspirators needed extra financial support and also needed him to collect weapons and prepare horses so that they were prepared for the uprising. Robert refused at first, but eventually agreed. However, unlike Thomas, Robert was not captured at Holbeche House. After the plot collapsed, he fled and managed to evade capture for 2 more months. He was finally arrested in January 1606 at Hagley in Worcestershire and was tried on the 27th of January. He was executed on the 30th in St Paul's Churchyard in London. Huddington Court played a key role during the planning and fallout of the failed uprising, but after the failure, the house was raided and was briefly confiscated by the Crown, but the Winter family was later able to regain possession of the property after paying fines. It's now a private residence and not open to the public, but is well preserved. Its beautiful Tudor facade is a lasting reminder of the house's role in one of England's most infamous conspiracies. Our next stop is White Webbs in Enfield, just north of London. The plotters chose this secluded house for its strategic location, close enough to the city for quick access, yet hidden deep within dense woodland and poorly signposted, making it ideal for secretive comings and goings. White Webbs became a discreet meeting place and weapons store for the conspirators. In his confession, Thomas Winter specifically mentioned the house, and it is believed that Guy Fawkes stayed here while preparing the gunpowder. The property was owned by Anne Vaux, a known Catholic sympathiser and a relative of Francis Tresham, one of the key figures in the plot. Although the original 16th century house was demolished in 1790, a new residence, retaining the name White Webbs, was later built on the site. While it has served as a private home and undergone many changes over the centuries, its connection to the Gunpowder Plot has largely been forgotten. We now return to the heart of the conspiracy, Ashby St, the ancestral home of the Catesby family. This historic manor in Northamptonshire was where the Gunpowder Plot began to take shape. Robert Catesby lived here with his mother, Lady Anne, and it was in a room above the gatehouse, set apart from the main house and offering a commanding view of the surrounding countryside, that the first secret meeting of the plotters took place in 1604. It was here, in this secluded upper room, that Catesby and his fellow conspirators laid the foundations of their deadly scheme. Ashby St soon became more than a meeting point. It served as a storehouse for arms, munitions, and gunpowder. There is no conclusive evidence that Lady Anne was aware of her son's treasonous activities. On the morning of the 5th of November 1605, before news of the plot's failure had spread, Robert Catesby sent a servant of Ambrose Rookwood to fetch his own son, as well as his nephew from Rushton, to be kept safe at Ashby under the care of his mother. Following Catesby's death in the aftermath of the failed plot, Ashby St was thoroughly searched, although only a small number of weapons hidden in a nearby ditch were found. The house itself was spared immediate confiscation thanks to Lady Anne's life tenancy, but by 1611 it had passed out of Catesby hands, ending over 4 centuries of family ownership. Though the manor was later remodelled in the 19th and 20th centuries, the original gatehouse still stands with the plotting room above, which remains remarkably intact with its wood panelling. Unfortunately, time has taken its toll. The stairs are decaying, the structure leans dangerously, and scaffolding now supports the fragile roof. Lord Wimborne, the current owner, has estimated that restoring Ashby St particularly the historic gatehouse, will cost upwards of £10 million. His vision is to eventually open this vital piece of British history to the public. It remains a race against time, but it is still one of the best preserved headquarters of the Gunpowder Plot remaining. Other buildings that are no longer standing are the Duck and Drake Inn and Thomas Percy's lodgings in London. The Duck and Drake is where Guy Fawkes reportedly stayed. The pub no longer exists, but it's believed to have been situated near the Strand in London. The conspirators met there in May 1604 to swear an oath of secrecy on a Bible and formally agree to the plot. Thomas Percy's London lodgings, situated near Westminster, has also played a crucial role in the Gunpowder Plot. Percy subleased a house from Henry Ferrers and placed Guy Fawkes there under the alias John Johnson, posing as his servant. Then, on the 25th of March, 1605, Percy obtained a lease for a vault directly beneath the House of Lords. It was into this undercroft that the conspirators eventually moved 36 barrels of gunpowder, transported from Catesby's lodgings across the River Thames. These homes were more than backdrops to the Gunpowder Plot. They were active participants in the story. Some were sites of final confrontation, others were places of planning, hiding, or escape, and remarkably many still stand today. As we take a look at these old buildings, we're reminded that history isn't just about people, it's about places that sheltered ideas, shielded rebels, and, in some cases, stood at the very heart of treason. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.